The Commission Files. Welcome to The Commission Files. I'm Will Leitch.
And I'm Kerry Greig. We're here in Dundonald in Studio 2 at the Commission Broadcast Centre.
And this is a regular podcast about Christian faith matters, profiling the stories and lives of Christians working in and speaking to society. And thanks to all of you who've been listening and giving us feedback on the last episode, all about David Moore and his new job in West Belfast. Even David was happy with it, Kerry, so we must be doing something right.
Of course we are. We've got lots in the pipeline for the coming editions, but this time we're thinking about 2 ways Christians can work and witness in so-called restricted countries where traditional missionaries aren't allowed.
In a moment, how that can happen in the world of business as mission. How would that compare with the traditional type of medical missionary, for example?
Medical ministry, you're with your patients, your staff all the time. In business, you have access to your employees, customers, all the time, and you live out your life, both word and deed, through the business. Yes, money can be viewed as corrupt, but God also uses money if we're good stewards of it.
And we'll also be getting an insight into the world of Sat7, Christian satellite broadcasting into the Middle East and North Africa.
نحن بهذا البودكاست عطول منبلش بسؤال نمطي.
Let's do some business as mission, or BAM. In the old days, we might have called it tent making, running an ordinary business in an unexpected place as a way of explaining Christian thinking and teaching to those the business deals with. Now, I welcomed someone, let's call him Matt, from Business as Mission into Studio 2 here at Commission during a trip he made from his base in Asia to the island of Ireland.
Matt is from the USA, but he lives and works in a restricted country and has to protect his employees, so he's careful about giving details of names and companies.
Now, Matt explained how Christian business people can make a difference. So here's how he explains Business as Mission. BAM, or as Matt calls it, BAM.
BAM is about releasing the entrepreneurs and business professionals within the church in order to transform the world through their business activities. That's really what BAM is. Another way to put it is business itself is the ministry and instrument for missions.
And in transforming the world, people are saying, wait a minute, businesses are enterprises to make money.
Yes.
How do you do mission? How do you present Christ to a world that needs to know him and have a relationship with him by making money? Or is that vastly simplified version of what you do?
Yeah. Well, really, that's a great question. The ultimate aim of BAM is to bring glory to God. And this is accomplished through environmental, economic, social, and spiritual transformation. The way I like to explain it in terms of missions is think about medical missions, doctors, nurses, hospitals. All of us are like, that's amazing. God is working through medical ministry. It's no different with business. Medical ministry, you're with your patients, your staff all the time. In business, you have access to your employees, customers all the time, and you live out your life, both word and deed, through the business. Yes, money can be viewed as corrupt, but God also uses money if we're good stewards of it.
There are lots of people listening to this who work for companies. Yeah. They're used to being told by their pastors, by their ministers, by their priests, be salt and light in the place where you work.
Yep.
Is this more than just being salt and light in a work environment?
Well, salt and light is obviously very foundational and important, but it's more than that. It's about the way I like to look at it is living out your faith in very practical ways where it's relational and not transactional. So where I have worked in Asia for many, many years, we have the freedom and opportunity to talk about what we believe and why, but it's done in a relational way. If it's through a human resource challenge, if it's through a challenge with a client, we can bring in how we are even going to respond to the situation based on our belief in the golden rule, which is in Matthew 7. So it's based on the context, but it's more than just being salt and light, which is definitely foundational.
And how do you decide where you're going to operate, where you want to be, which countries in the world you think it would be good for a BAM-focused mission to be in, companies that you set up, encourage, whatever? Because you must have criteria where you say this is where we need to be.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally, the idea of BAM, and another word that's been used even prior is tent makers, is let's go to places where people who cannot go as traditionally, I'll call them cross-cultural workers, because they're not allowed to be there for those reasons. These are called restricted countries, closed countries. So we're going to go in with an identity as business and be salt and light and very intentional. That's very strategic in those locations. It's why I went to Asia 28 years ago. But since living BAM for the last 28 years in a place like Asia, I've realized as I go back to my home country in North America, it's no different. We need to be living it wherever we are. How we live it is based on the context.
A BAM business, you've talked about the relational side of it. Is there a Christian element just to how it's managed, how it's run, its ethics, its dynamics?
I mean, that's very important, because you cannot be, for example, talking about the teachings of Jesus, for example, and praying with people, but not running your company in accordance with it. So, for example, in many of these countries, in these restricted areas, there's this concept of, well, in order to get anything done, you pay bribes, right? Well, a company that is focused on the kingdom, that's BAM focused, will take a stance that we will not pay bribes in order to get work done. And so that will not go against what they're teaching. So that's one of, other examples as well. But yeah, how you run your company is very, very important. But I just want to make it clear, BAM is far beyond that. That's part about being the salt and light, but I really believe we have to proclaim and live out our faith in a very intentional way within the workplace.
It begs an obvious question, though. If, for example, and you raised the example of bribes, where that's the culture, that's what's expected, people may look at you and hoping you'll work out that's what they want, or they may just tell you. In some countries, that happens all the time. If you're not prepared to do that, what else do you do?
I will give a great example, because I think stories help. We had a gentleman from another country applying for his visa to the country I was living in, and his visa got held up at the Home Affairs office for months. And I finally, after several months of going in and out, it was just a few days before Christmas, and my friend said, Matt, if I don't get my visa by Christmas Eve, I'm not coming back to work at your company. And we were desperate to have him, because he was a vital part of the growth of our company. So I called my wife. I said, Michelle, could you please make some Christmas cookies? And she said, why? I said, I'm going to the Home Affairs office and I'm meeting the top official, and I'm going to give him Christmas cookies and wish him Merry Christmas and ask him to enjoy these cookies, and then say, sir, you know I've been here many times requesting my friend's visa. Could you please grant the visa he's entitled to? I went there. I presented him the cookies. We had a cup of tea. I asked him to please grant the visa. He should be granted. He said, yes, sir. By the time I got home, 20 minutes later, I had an email that my friend had his visa. I'll tell you what, did I bribe him with cookies? Fine. I can be accused of bribing with cookies. No, I did a relational thing where, without shaming him, I actually honored him by taking him homemade cookies for Christmas and spending time with him. And he realized, you know what, I wasn't going to pay him a bribe at all, but I did it through a relational, call it transaction of cookies. And I'll never forget that story.
You talked about operating in restricted countries. That's difficult. And I imagine there might be times where, I don't know, but governments either might not like the thought of a Christian-run company being there, or might be quite happy to tolerate it as long as no one makes a fuss about it and it's not terribly overt and there's no local agitation about that, which might happen. But it means surely that on occasion you have to walk a very careful tightrope, as it were.
Yeah, I work with an investment fund that invests all throughout North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. And as we look at different companies we can partner with, besides us looking at the business plan and model, which is very, very important for our investors to say this is a wise investment, is we look at what's called the spiritual impact plan. And what's real important to answer your question is one country and one location, how they are going to carry out, I'll call it a kingdom gospel impact, will be different than if it was in my location because of these concerns. And so we have the company owners really articulate how do they see having a spiritual kingdom impact, holistic impact within their environment. Have they thought through it? And in this area, they can be more open about it than in other areas. For example, in my company where I lived, I have been able to have with my business partner seminars on Good Friday. Why is Good Friday good? And have it optional. I've been able to have weekend retreats with our employees, their spouses, and kids as a marriage seminar, knowing that they're going to understand and learn what it means to have a healthy marriage where God's at the center. They know this when they agree to come to it. And this is in a country where you're not allowed to be a cross-cultural worker. But in other countries, you could never do that. But there are definitely strategic ways to do it based on understanding the context. I see BAM as loving and serving people and in appropriate ways introducing them to Jesus.
I've taken the opportunity to get some time with you, Matt, because you're in Ireland for a variety of reasons. You're also meeting people.
Yeah.
People listening to this who are thinking, that's interesting. I like the vision. I like the dynamic. I know about business. I've been a business person X number of years. How do they support you? How do they help you? Apart from praying for you, and I hope they do. How do they support and help you and encourage you personally, professionally, financially? What is it you would like from them?
Yeah, there's many ways. I would love, as well as my colleagues, willing to engage with them. They can go to our website, transformationalsme.org, and they will find information about Business as Mission and what we're doing in North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. There's a place where they can fill out a request to be contacted as a potentially company that is looking for investment, as someone who would like to potentially be an investor, a mentor, just understand more in general. So that would be one way where they could have personal contact with myself or my colleagues.
I was talking to Matt from Business as Mission. That website he mentioned there is transformationalsme.org. Transformationalsme.org. Kerry, I just loved that Christmas cookie story.
Well, did you get the recipe for me?
He wouldn't tell me. I think it's
No,
Michelle's
because you know how much I love to
special
bake
secret.
too.
Yeah, you would have loved it. Michelle's keeping it to herself, and it's staying that way, I think.
Oh, that's a shame. You're listening to the Commission Files, and we need to take a quick break.
Hello, I'm Colin Flanagan. I'm head of programmes here at Commission Christian Radio in Dundonald. Commission specialises in radio drama, Bible radio drama, and we have been doing this for nearly 50 years. I'll let the drama speak for itself.
Commission Christian Radio Drama, bringing the Bible to life. Stories from the New Testament.
She's going! Abandon ship! Whoa! Where are you? Saviors! Jump! Before it's too late! Jump!
And stories from the old.
Wretched little harp twanger. Take that!
Your Majesty! That spear might have killed me.
Yes, indeed it might.
Stories about followers of Jesus.
There he hung, my friend, my healer, and no one to heal him.
And his enemies.
So, gentlemen, we must deal with this man, Jesus of Nazareth. We cannot permit him to continue to flout our law and our authority.
Commission Christian Radio Drama, bringing the Bible to life.
Isn't that something? If you'd like to hear these dramas, go to commissionradio.org. Click on Programmes, where you'll find more than 30 radio Bible dramas. Enjoy them.
This is the Commission Files with Will Leitch and Kerry Greig.
When a Christian satellite station launched in Turkey with content from local churches, there was widespread fascination. Who are these people? What do they believe? Back in the 80s and 90s, when satellite TV suddenly burst into the Middle East, people said Christians couldn't be part of it.
But they are. Sat7 is doing just that. Sat as in satellite, 7, Sat7. Now look them up online. They're made up of several Christian channels in several languages where local churches broadcast to local people, programming about everything and everyone. And they're watched avidly across the Middle East and North Africa. And here's part of one of their own promotional videos.
The Middle East and North Africa, a region rich in culture, amazing people, and natural beauty. It is also a place of turmoil, war, struggle, and oppression. People are searching desperately for hope and change. Christianity originated here, and while 3% of the region remains Christian, the church is often persecuted and its existence is at risk. As millions look for meaning and truth, there is a great opportunity here to present the Christian message. But a lack of religious freedom, censorship, and widespread illiteracy has until recently made this almost impossible. We operate almost entirely on donations. For less than £1 per viewer per year, we bring hope to one of the world's most troubled regions. Almost 500 million people here have access to satellite TV. By overcoming the challenges of illiteracy, censorship, and limited internet access, satellite TV remains the most effective way to reach people. Hundreds contact us every day, sharing stories of how they've received hope through our programs. Sat7 is having an amazing impact on people and their communities. We broadcast over borders into millions of homes. Our vision is to see transformed lives and a growing church throughout the Middle East and North Africa.
That's a Sat7 video. The latest guest through the door of Studio 2 is David Middleton, Director of Strategy and Impact for Sat7. David is from Derry, and he still lives here, although he and his family have lived in Turkey. Will and I managed to pin him down in the middle of his very busy schedule.
Yeah, he does travel, definitely between aeroplanes. Now, David and I first met in the 80s as students. We've stayed in touch, or as much as men ever do, so I knew that his story of how he joined Sat7, that remarkable organisation, and the story of what they do would be just fascinating.
Around the same time that satellite television exploded onto the scene in the Middle East in the early 90s, I think our founder, Terry Ascott, who lived in Lebanon at the time, had been very much aware of the potential of Christian television or television programming. Some experiences he had where he could really see the potential for reaching ordinary people. He saw one man who was a doorkeeper on a building construction site, and he had a little television rigged up to a car battery and a satellite dish and was busy watching. When he saw that, I think it was a kind of eureka moment for him. Here was a medium that could really reach people. You know, it was free, it was uncensored, and it had a huge potential. Yeah, a lot of people felt, yes, it had a lot of potential, and they could see how it would make a real impact. But I think not many people believed it was possible at that stage. Of course, now everybody's doing media and everybody can produce media, video, and so on.
Everybody who's anybody has a podcast.
Exactly. Well, yes, that's very true, yeah. Or have a YouTube site or this.
Take me through the sheer number of channels and languages and outlets and kinds of programmes, because it's hugely impressive if you take the time to look at it.
Yeah, it has grown a lot in the last, in its history, I guess, 26 years or whatever now. 3 main languages, so there's about, I would say, an overall reach, and that's not audience, but reach of 500 million odd people, perhaps more than that. That's the 3 language groups, each with their own channels. We have a channel for Arabic, a channel in Persian, a channel in Turkish. We also have a channel specifically for kids in the Arab world. So it runs over 5 time zones, 22 countries odd. So that's specifically for Arabic-speaking kids. But of course now we also have what's called digital media platforms on YouTube and so on. But we have our own video-on-demand service, which was launched a couple of years ago, and I think is the only Christian-type service like that where we can stream the channels over the internet and also let people watch content on demand. So all of that is a lot more than the initial 2 hours a week.
That actual amount of people that you are reaching, you're not scared to actually tackle the difficult topics. And I think I was very impressed actually that you cover every aspect. You were talking about the children there, you were talking about, well, there's lots of women's issues you hint upon or actually discuss. I'm interested to know about how that came into being.
Yeah. I think Sat7 is distinct in its approach to broadcasting. I mean, a lot of Christian channels would maybe be more focused on teaching or worship, perhaps, and the funding model may be a ministry that owns it, who provide the content. That's quite common. And then maybe they would give some time to perhaps local broadcasters or whatever. Sat7 from the start was really set up to give the churches of the Middle East an opportunity to engage and present themselves really to their neighbours and the people they live with in a region where it's very difficult for Christians to have a voice or to be heard or to explain themselves. Television has it's very good at doing that aspect of communication, if you like, where people perhaps have misunderstandings or reservations or even prejudice about Christian faith in the church. Television, if done, I believe, in a way which is good television, but reflects the life of the church and reflects the faith of Christians in a positive way, even that by itself can make a huge difference to people's understanding and acceptance or interest in the Christian faith. So I think from the very beginning there was a concern to give the power, if you like, to give the control to the churches, to the people living in the region who will experience the benefits or the problems that arise out of the programming. And we just recently reiterated that as a priority for us, because today in media, as we said, everybody's producing. Everybody can access content if they have connection to the internet. They can get all sorts of benefits from that. But what we want to do is to reinforce that local voice, to support those local people in that particular local context. And if we can do that, if we can amplify their voices, if we can address the issues that they face, if we can help them present Christian truth and experience to their neighbours in a positive way, we feel that's our main calling. So we're not really too interested in becoming an international ministry that can reach Arabic, Turkish and Persian speakers everywhere. What we want to do is be an authentic voice, communication in that area where people are living. And I think, as I say, that's a bit of a debate at the minute amongst media strategy, but particularly because of the ease of access, because of the...
In the secular world too, you know, there are a lot of mainstream media organisations struggling with this.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved looking into everything that Sat7 does, I could see universalities, and by that I simply means that no matter where you look in the world, children's programming has Muppet-like puppets. You're part of the shows.
Yes.
And I just love that because...
Oh, they're great though.
Yeah, exactly. And we've all been at church services where the youth director or the children's director gets and you think, oh, that's the puppets, but actually incredibly effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really liked seeing that. You talked a lot about local broadcasting and you talked about local broadcasters, and you said the positive and sometimes the difficult effects of them doing what they do. And there was in the video we heard the little clip from at the start, the potential for persecution. Do you get into trouble in certain places if you're a broadcaster on one of these shows, or if you're found to be listening or watching one of these shows?
It is a reality of Christian witness in that region. It would be naive to think it wasn't. And when people put their faces on television, particularly, there are risks for them when they do that. Again, it would be naive to think it wasn't that. That wasn't the case. For a lot of believers who are on screen, for them, they consider it an honour and privilege, even if there is a large risk that they will become targeted or face difficulties because of what they're doing. And even in church congregations where, they will show their faces on the screen in places in North Africa and so on, where it's quite personal, to do that. People are going to see them, recognise them, and it's a reality in Iran as well. It's actually illegal to own a satellite dish. Periodically, the police will sweep areas and remove them. So even watching can be a risk, but it's probably more common within families where there's still very much a family control, if you like, of what people watch. So husbands will monitor what their wives and children are watching. If you've been caught watching a Christian channel by your father, perhaps you will. We've definitely heard of people facing difficulties because of that. But the remarkable thing is it doesn't put people off. They have the faith and they want either to be on the programme. Also, people are willing to listen and watch as well. And despite the risks, quite often big risks. Yeah.
If you were living in Iran,
yes,
and you were watching Sat7,
yes,
how would you find out about it?
Yeah, because we don't actually spend a lot of money on, advertising or anything. When we first started our Turkish broadcasts, I was the one kind of who was involved in starting that up. And what was remarkable was the amount of interest shown in our first 2-hour broadcast on an Arabic satellite channel, because we were testing. There was we were on the mainstream media, and there was huge interest in just the fact that the Christian channel were broadcasting. And I think that's part of the reality in a lot of these countries, that Christian media is attractive. In the olden days of the 90s, it wasn't available. Now there's more than Sat7 around. There's quite a lot, and with the internet, there's all sorts of access, and people are very interested. And the beauty about television is, of course, it's the privacy of your own home. You can turn off if you don't like what you're seeing, and so on. So people in Iran there's huge interest in Christian media. It's difficult with Iran and Turkey to actually get numbers of people who are watching. We're potentially reaching 500,000. That doesn't mean that we have a regular audience of that number. We have a regular audience across all our channels, conservatively, of 15 million viewers. But in Iran and Turkey, it's very difficult to get real numbers because of the nature of the questions that you have to ask people. Do you watch a Christian channel? There's a lot of people watching. There is a lot of people watching. I mean, we kind of know that objectively from the surveys, and also from just the responses that we get from viewers who contact us. That obviously doesn't equate with numbers, but it's an indicator that there are people at least watching.
David, I believe your background is architecture.
Oh,
so
yeah.
How have you ended up working for Sat7?
Well, it's probably a longer story than we have time for.
I don't want to hear it again.
I think
I don't know it.
I think I was. I mean, I did work as an architect. It's true. And when we went actually overseas with an organisation as Christian workers, we did did intend, my wife and I intend to use our skills. I think when we ended up in Turkey, where we went, and we saw the potential of media, I saw the potential of media through contact with various people. I guess I changed direction. That was the beginning of it. There was a number of steps, but I was particularly interested in getting involved in a project that would bring encouragement and help to the church, something that would require somebody to give it their full-time attention. And
did you always have a heart for the Middle East?
I did, yeah. I mean, I was certainly informed about it and prayed about it through different prayer groups, and led different prayer groups for the Middle East, really, since I became a Christian in the early 80s and went to university, where I met various other individuals.
Yes, all right.
Yours truly included. So yes, it was very much part of my Christian.
What our children call the olden times.
The olden times, yeah. So I did have years of praying, and I remember from that time people said, "Be careful what you pray for, because it can very often end up you can become some of the answer to some of your prayers, at least." And it is an area of the world where the church, I wouldn't say it's weak. It's numerically small, but I think it is an area where outside help can make a difference.
How long have you been with Sat7 then?
Well, so initially I wasn't really a part of Sat7. We were actually partners in the project we were doing in Turkey, and we ended up becoming a full part of Sat7 about 13 years ago, when we changed the name to Sat7 Turk, and then subsequently we managed to get a channel on the government-owned Turksat satellite. So we've been on that satellite now for 10 years.
Right. So is Turkey a favourite place to go to then?
Oh, I love Turkey, yeah. It's like a second home for me. We were there for 9 or 10 years. So
lovely.
Yeah.
You don't have
and
a
I'm
wee
still
house there
regularly
then?
back. No, I don't. But if some, that would be very nice. But no, although I do get back regularly.
I didn't like the design. Well, I want to give people a little bit of a sense of just some of the variety of what they can hear. So in tuning across, and you can listen to all the channels on the internet. You can watch them on YouTube quite often with English subtitles, which is really interesting because you can work out what's going on. But I listened across several programmes and caught a current affairs podcast, a song sung for children, a very impressive video, a theme tune for a kids channel, which will have you all bouncing in your seats, and a worship session at a church from another channel. And what I loved about that is when the band dropped their voices and you could hear the congregation singing. So have a listen to this.
نحن بهذا البودكاست عطول بنبلش بسؤال نمطي.
أنا كنت حدا بيحلم إني أدرس دومين التصوير والإخراج.
باركوا من يسيء لكم، أحسنوا لمن يبغضكم، لا تردوا شر شرا، كونوا دوما لطفاء.
Those are just some of the things you can hear and give you an indication of what you're hearing. And what struck me more than anything, and I would do this because for more than 30 years I was a news journalist, there's the podcast dealing with current affairs at the very beginning. And you as Sat7 therefore have to talk to what is happening in your region. And this autumn we have seen the horror of what is happening in Gaza and Israel. Some people like to call it the Holy Land, but the point is that has been happening. There have been the earthquakes and the floods in North Africa, and I know that there has been programming done to ask people how they are coping, what they are doing. As an organisation, when there's so much horror and there's so much division and people trying to understand it in sometimes very poor ways and very ill-informed ways, how do you even talk to that? How do you even speak to that? And yet your presenters do.
Yeah, and I think, again, it comes back to a local presence. And part of what we're trying to do in our kind of current work, as I mentioned, that we're trying to reinforce the idea that we're, for the people who are living in the region, that's our primary audience, our primary area of concern, if you like. But part of that means trying to get in to the areas where people are suffering, not to report the news, but to give them a voice in the midst of it.
We haven't forgotten you.
And we haven't forgotten you. And to bring words of hope and encouragement, because, human beings are complex beings. We're made in the image of God with many dimensions to our humanity: physical, emotional, psychological, existential. All these dimensions are connected, and people don't just need physical help and comfort or resources when they suffer. They need spiritual help. They need emotional help. They need to feel that they're understood. And Sat7 has that as its ministry to try and, through its content, through going into the earthquake zone in Turkey with a team and staying there for a while to try and talk to people and hear the stories that they have. Through the other, it seems, to be honest, in the Middle East, every month brings a new crisis, and we're recording this today. We could be facing something next week completely different, and it does tend to be like that. We've had over the years, really, it's one crisis after another, or disaster after another, and it is part of Sat7's ministry to really kind of get in to where people are really suffering, rather than broadcasting something in from a distance. So I think what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that part of being local in what is now a digital world, which includes satellite, but also all these other platforms and ways of reaching people, we want to actually be with people and make content with them as much as we can. So to get out of the studios, if you like, to get where people are and make sure that we're doing that job of giving local voices an opportunity to be heard on the different formats that we have.
None of us survive without hope. Bringing that real hope to the people that are watching, that no matter what they're going through, especially as you say, there's something happening each day or each week nearly in the Middle East. So I can see just how Sat7 would just be a real life saver to some people.
And not just Sat7, but in the sense that it's not just what the team are doing. They're there to actually show what has been done by the church as well. That's when you mentioned Turkey, that just came to my mind. In many places where the earthquake struck, the churches were the ones who were the first responders, really. After and there's the church in Turkey, or the churches in Turkey, they're not numerically big, but they were well organised in this case and able to respond and give help to places which were in complete crisis. So to be able to show that, to be able to witness that, and it was very, very powerful to show the church at work, to show what the churches are doing. I think part of what we can do as Christians is to explain ourselves. One of the things we don't do is to try and interpret other religions or to criticise them. We're very careful about that. We purely want to engage, and we are overtly Christian. Again, it's not that we want to use unfair methods or techniques to try and persuade or coerce people at all, but we want to be upfront about the fact that we're doing this as Christians. And I think people, again, that puts them at their ease. They don't feel that they've suddenly, oh, I've been watching this channel for 3 weeks, but actually now I've suddenly discovered it's a Christian channel. So
yes,
those things together can create a peace, I think, unless we can somehow enable Christians to feel part of their communities in the Middle East. The church will find it difficult to exist. It'll disappear potentially.
For those people who are fascinated, inspired by what Sat7 does, how can they support you? Yes, they can go to the website, look you up and say, I'm going to support you financially, fine. What would you love them to be praying for? What would you love them to be hoping for where the whole work goes now?
We'd be delighted for any support that people are able to give us. We have kind of websites for support. So we have a UK office that is a very good site to visit as a supporter if you're living in the UK or Ireland. It's likewise for the States. We have one there in Canada and so on. I think for us there is this challenge of locality and also how we engage with digital media particularly. Media is changing. Satellite television is still very much, I would say, king in the region. It's not something that we're going to stop doing at all. But increasingly there is a marriage or a blending with digital media, social media, whatever aspect of that you can think of. If you're not present and up to date in that arena as a satellite channel, it's more difficult. I mean, when we started broadcasting, we were receiving from viewers letters with stamps on them. Then it became emails and text messages. Now most of our contact with audience is through social media, WhatsApp, Telegram. These are all platforms that you can engage viewers with and also broadcast on. And so that marriage, that linkage, the way that the two elements reinforce each other or work with each other is a huge challenge for us because it's more work with the same people and pretty much the same financial resources. So we need a lot of wisdom to know where to put our resources, what content we should make and how to make it in order to address the potential and the reality of broadcasting, which is very different from 1996 when we started. Yeah, and maybe more generally for the people in the region, especially the Christians. When the Apostle Paul prayed for the churches of his time, if you read the prayers, they don't generally, as far as I know, include, that God would protect them from suffering, that he would change their circumstances, that he would, it's very much...
They don't talk about politics or
absent
constitutional matters.
From his
state of the Roman Empire or anything else, no.
Well, but what he did pray for, actually, quite often was that the believers would be strengthened in their inner being and that they would be able then to go out into this world and in their own experience, strong in spirit and able with the energy and Spirit of God to engage, to have the energy of life to engage with the problems around them. That is really what I guess I would pray, not just for people in the Middle East, I think for myself, that emotional energy, that life, the Holy Spirit's life, would be present and sustaining and empowering me in my witness,
David Middleton there. The sheer breadth of programmes that they make at Sat7 is really quite amazing. Well, as a broadcaster for many years, what do you think?
Well, I couldn't agree more. The quality of any programme always shows if it's there. And I actually found a lot of quality here. Really fascinating watching through what they make. A lot of it was very moving. So do try it. Go to Sat7 on YouTube and see what they do. I love that their emphasis is on local churches and what they want to say to the people in their own communities.
Totally agree with you. Thanks to David for coming in. Next time on the Commission Files, Will and I are looking into the cost of living crisis and the Christian groups who are standing in the gap. Who are they? What are they doing? and do they have the right approach?
And that's it for this edition. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to subscribe through your podcast provider. And if you've enjoyed listening, do please tell your friends.
The Commission Files is produced and recorded in Studio 2 at Commission in Dundonald. You can check Commission out at commissionradio.org.
And you might like to look out for another podcast. It's called Inspired to Act, and it's from Thrive Ireland, presented by me and Thrive's director Diane Holt. Details at thriveIreland.org.
Thanks for listening. From me, Kerry Greig.
And from me, Will Leitch.
Bye.
See ya.